Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
Sure is. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it sure can be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all the fields.
Yeah, we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get one that we are presently aware of, so you better make the most of it.
That's it.
Well, Uncle Dan.
Yeah.
We got another show on tap for this week.
Here it is. We're doing it right now at the present moment.
Yep, and it's live whenever you listen to it, people.
That's right. Live on tape.
I am going to talk about something super weird and maybe a little distressing for a moment.
Yeah, you're being all mysterious about it, but it'll be. I'm looking forward to it. I am assured it will be delightful.
Yeah, it is predates St. Francis probably in some way. So we're gonna have an oppression expression that's a pretty weird one.
Yeah, indeed we are. And then Uncle Doug's going to be here. He's going to tell us all about a new fun thing that's happening in our government.
Yeah, something a really sunny Gestapo that we're all going to have to get used to.
Oh, everybody loves it.
And then we're going to invite our friend Mandisa Thomas from the Black Non-Believers on to talk about the experience of being a non-believer in the black culture.
Apparently, contrary to popular belief, black people are allowed not to believe in God if they want to.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have Tyler Perry on later to rebut that. So.
Yes, indeed.
All right, so let's do it.
Let's do a show. Say, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Dan.
Welcome, and we're glad to have you. I guess our Uncle Mark is going to be talking to us about some stuff.
Yeah, we don't know what he's going to talk about.
It seems it's very mysterious. Yeah. And I'm worried.
Like Mark himself. Like mysterious and worrying.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Uncle Mark.
And mercurial is another word.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which just means I'm fucking moody.
Yeah, you're a bit of a grump sometimes.
I thought it meant you were made of mercury.
Also, probably based on my age, I'm probably made of mercury.
And your recent sushi consumption, one assumes, being having been coastal.
Lots of sushi. True. So, yeah, today... There's a reason I'm grumpy and mercurial today, and it's because I'm going to be doing an oppression expression.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, and this is our segment where we talk about people who've kind of ended up with the shitty end of the religious stick.
Sure.
From time immemorial.
Which, does the religious stick have a non-shitty end?
If you are the Pope.
Yeah. If you live inside the Vatican.
Yeah, if you're getting rich off of it. Yeah, I mean, I guess...
a very, very small non-shitty side.
Osteen has a pretty good non-shitty side of that stick.
Osteen's end of the stick is a beautifully tax-free ergonomic handle.
The non-shitty end of the stick is filed to a fine point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I'm going to demonstrate today that sometimes, well, in a very specific time, it wasn't just people that got the shitty end of the religious stick.
Oh?
It was our brothers and sisters in the animal kingdom.
Okay.
So I didn't know.
Oh dear, we're going critters, huh?
Whether to call this segment Law and Order Barnyard or simply Bird Law.
Skunk.
But let me just jump right in. So this is kind of about animal trials, and we'll explore them in a fair amount of detail.
Is this like a Charlotte's Web sort of thing? What do we got here?
Or an Animal Farm kind of a thing.
Well, when I bring up animal trials, you might be exactly thinking of the gruesome scene from George Orwell's Animal Farm, in which Napoleon responds to the hens' rebellion by putting on a Stalinist show trial and has them all murdered by the dogs. No, that's not what I am to discuss today.
Okay.
Surely you say, Uncle Mark, you mean the celebrated episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where we discover one of Charlie Kelly's main hidden talents is his expertise in bird law, with which he reveals the existence of Royal McPoyle, the true eye-plucking culprit, in a dramatic courtroom surprise. And while we do need to discuss that, I think as a society at much greater length,
sure,
that's not what we're doing.
And that's a different podcast. That's Uncle Mark's Always Sunny fanboy podcast.
It's Always Sunny in Uncle Mark's closet. No. So I was kind of reminded of this phenomenon by another towering monument of popular culture, Drunk History.
Oh, sure.
They did an episode recently featuring the wonderful Jack McBrayer as a lawyer for rats. So, you see, medieval Europeans were many things. They were industrious. They were curious under very controlled circumstances. They were afraid of the dark, and oftentimes they were stupid. And one way our cousins in the European Middle Ages expressed their stupidity was to use their brutal church-based systems, legal systems, to put animals, down to and including termites, on trial in a courtroom with a judge and a prosecutor and a public defender.
So they were bored. What you're saying is that they were a very bored people.
They were bored and insane.
Bored and litigious, apparently.
Bored and litigious. So we like to think of the 14th and 15th and 16th centuries in Europe as the time they were busy building all the shit we Americans like to go take selfies with, the giant cathedrals and the cool castles and all that stuff. And yes, that is what was happening.
Sure.
And many of us know that many a medieval evening, the facades of those truly magnificent buildings were lit with the crackling glow of screaming people being set on fire on purpose for the crime of disagreeing about the proper date of Easter or that baptizing babies was weird. But, you got to break a few eggs to make such timelessly beautiful omelets.
Religion.
Religion. But in between setting Protestants on fire and putting Galileo under house arrest because he made the Pope mad when he figured out how the sky worked, there was still some time left as everybody desperately waited for the Renaissance and the Enlightenment to get going. So why not put pigs and donkeys on trial?
Sure,
So
why not?
This is, no pun intended, a rabbit hole. The scholarship on animal trials in the Middle Ages is crazy. But I'll limit myself to just a few wonderful examples. So the first known one that people were able to find, scholars were able to find, was in the very stressful year 666 in France.
Love that year.
Oh, really?
That was my favorite year.
I'm surprised they let that year happen.
Yeah.
They just didn't go to 667.
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we all survived that year.
I'm surprised we survived any year in
I got
600s.
I got through it, but it wasn't easy. You know what I mean? I what I did, as you'll see here, is I cursed and burned a bunch of storks alive.
Well, as you do.
Which was the first listed animal trial and execution, but I couldn't find what the actual charge was. then in 824 in Italy, a group of moles were excommunicated for reasons unknown, and I thought, well, perhaps they were part of some secret underground.
Well, it's just
Boo.
oh man, that hurt. That one hurt. I was just going to say, what these stupid moles didn't know was that their eternal souls were at peril.
They're mole
The
souls.
souls moles.
when they were finally.
And there's a thing called anathema,
Yeah.
which is, we'll talk a little bit more about it. Basically, because they couldn't necessarily kill every rat in the village, they would excommunicate them. So,
That'll show them.
so
Give us plague, will you? Ha ha!
before we
You
delve,
don't get to go to heaven, son of a bitch.
before we delve into more detail about all this awfulness, there's a peculiar jurisdictional distinction to be made. It turns out there was a sort of county line where one authority ended and another began.
Right.
See, domesticated animals living on farms and in towns were considered part of human society, a very much lesser part, but still a part. They were prosecuted by civil authorities, obviously. But animals not under the direct control of humans, like rats, flies, beetles, locusts, eels, and yes, dolphins, required special policing, magic policing. That's where Animal Cops Vatican City were called in. Now, as most civil authorities were still dominated by the church, we won't let that little legal boundary bother us too much for this segment.
So does that mean if the dolphin makes it out over the county line, all the cops have to stop?
That's right.
Yeah.
Bad boys,
out of their
bad
jurisdiction.
boys, what you gonna do?
So it's worth a quick journey through the origins of Christian
You got to
thinking.
do it. You got to do it on purpose.
Oh God, you're both on one.
I'm so glad we're not recording this. So it's worth a quick reminder of what the origins of Christian thinking about the value of animals and the varying degrees of barbarity that these godly forebears presumed God created them to sustain. As you'll recall, Genesis 1:28 says that God created humans in his own image, saying to them, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and conquer it." That hasn't caused any fucking trouble.
Nope.
Be masters of the fish of the sea, the birds of heaven, and all living animals on earth.
You know, I've tried to be a master of fish. They do not listen.
Aquaman.
I literally, you yell at a fish, they don't do it.
Growing up, I loved Aquaman so much because I liked swimming, and I realize now that I thought he was really hot.
Right.
And it wasn't until a few years ago that I realized that he's kind of the lamest of the superheroes.
Oh, he's the lamest.
Oh,
It broke my
100%.
heart. It broke my heart.
Well, I mean, now he's Jason Momoa. He's suddenly cool again.
He's cool at things. It's come full circle.
But I mean, he's not that blonde like boy in spandex that we all
The
grew up
orange
with.
shirts, the orange scaly shirts.
Whose
orange shirt?
big superpower was going mo 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 at fish.
Yeah, and then the whales would be like, got it.
Got it. Check. Roger that.
Where'd Aquaman go? Who cares?
Somebody tell the minnows.
He's dealing with sardines at the moment. So, that there is that commandment or that original thing in Genesis when God was making all the things. And it's led to a bunch of horrors over the years. But there are some tempering follow-ups in the biblical texts that are Sarah McLachlan level animal welfare concern, such as Leviticus 22, an old friend of ours, says a cow and her calf were not to be killed on the same day. That's nice.
That's sure.
That's nice.
Give the mom one day to mourn.
Yeah.
And then cut her up.
Or the kid. Well,
Or the kid.
Either way.
Either way.
You just
Right.
Deuteronomy 25 says oxen treading the corn were not to be muzzled. That's
Words to live by.
so important. So relevant to our modern
seems
times.
fair to me. Deuteronomy 14 kindly says kids, meaning baby goats, or fuck it, it's Deuteronomy. It might mean human children as well, were not to be cooked in their mother's milk.
Right?
Yeah.
And later, like, is that an impose that people had that
Right.
needed curbing?
It was a problem.
Well, just use his aunt's milk. That's all you need. Go one udder over.
And mother birds are not to be disturbed while sitting on eggs, and that oxen and asses are not to be yoked together. Okay, Bible. Thanks for all the super helpful information.
In the eye. Arms, isn't it?
Oh,
the eyes, I almost saying in the eyes of an angel.
You had to make it all sexual. That's so creepy. But then that's just the nasty Old Testament that Christians insist no takesies backsies on.
Right.
But still sell it attached at the spine to the New Testament as a match set. Oddly, for a book they love to ignore whenever one of us brings it up. But what does the super enlightened New Testament have to say about being kind to animals?
Oh, this is going to go well.
Let's see where to begin. Hold on. Nothing.
Jesus rode into town on an ass. I remember that.
And a donkey. And a fig tree's not really an animal, is it?
No.
No, but I like figs. But it literally says nothing. In fact, it says quite a few things to the opposite. St. Augustine argued that Jesus allowing the 2,000 Gadarene swine to drown demonstrate that man has no duties to animals at all. Quote, Christ shows that to refrain from the killing of animals and the destroying of plants is the height of superstition. Now, if you don't remember the Gadarene swine,
Oh, I do.
yeah, it's when Jesus cast the demon out of some dude and then all into the pigs and they all ran into the water.
Right.
Yep. 2000.
And then strangely, the Christians became the ones who actually eat pigs, as opposed to the Jews.
I'll show you on the whiteboard how it all pencils out. Okay. Totally makes sense. So 900 years later, our friend Thomas Aquinas argued that it was actually desirable to be decent to animals because being mean to animals meant you were likely to be a prick to people. Sure, dude, just like the rest of us, you've binge-watched Mindhunter,
Right.
but mostly because it might cost somebody something financially. So
Right.
that's why you don't be mean to animals. So better, but not great. So back to the absurdities of bird court. So in most cases, an aggrieved person would make a pleading to the judge about damaged crops or whatever, and the court would dispatch an investigator to estimate the damage. Once they reported back to the judge, then the judge would invariably demand public processions and prayers to allay heaven's anger before the trial proper began.
I think, by the way, I'm just going to throw this out there. We're going to have a new Patreon goal for all of you. If we make enough money with this thing, we will make Enzo attaché to Bird Court. It will be a movie, and the investigator will be an Italian. We'll figure it out. We're working on it.
Yeah, he's a hard-hitting
Yeah.
hard-boiled, hard-drinking
Bird investigator.
bird cop. So if those intercessions for holy help didn't work, it was off to the races.
Yeah.
One of the most famous incidents was the one that Drunk History tackled beautifully. The rats of Autun, France, were summoned to answer for their devouring of the region's barley crops, and the judge appointed a guy whose name is so beautiful I just have to say it. Bartholomew Chassenet.
Oh.
He argued that the rats could not be expected to appear because they lived all over the place.
Right. And we can't catch them.
And the court thought, yeah, that's a good idea. You're right. So the court ordered summons to be read in all the towns and villages affected, read out loud in French.
In French, which is the rat language.
To the rats. Yeah. When they failed to appear again, Chassenet argued, the journey was arduous and cats were fucking everywhere, so it was an unfair burden on his clients. And he won.
I think now we got a spin-off series that is our second Patreon goal, which is Rat Defender. Bartholomew, Rat Defender.
And he's on a bus bench, his arms crossed.
Are you a rat?
You a rat? I can help you out. You won't be surprised that pigs, again, were frequently the offending party, as they can be aggressively omnivorous. They were often tried for eating the body parts of children that were unable to escape them.
Oh, yeah.
One pig was hanged for eating an entire child. It gets better. And it was an aggravated offense because it was a Friday.
Oh, my God. Wow.
It's Fish on Fridays, Mr. Pig, not Philip.
and not for nothing, but do pigs have necks?
It sounds really complicated.
Can't be easy. No matter what.
It's slipping out.
I'll show you on the board after the show. There's a whole way you do it. So again in France, 3 sow pigs went nuts and killed a young man. There were several piglets in the pen as well that were spattered with blood. In a strange moment of mercy, it was decided in lengthy proceedings that the piglets were innocent, so they were not hanged or burned like their murderous mother and aunties.
Finally, justice being served.
At last, mercy. So victim blaming was a whole side business of these absurd courts. Animals who had been raped by humans were treated especially harshly.
Oh, well.
no.
Whores.
Because that's biblical, obviously.
Yeah, and that's where the word horse comes from, is whores. So a donkey that got fucked by some peasant was sentenced to burn with him.
They burned the peasant too, though.
They burned the peasant too.
Okay.
So
At least, at least there's that.
Him
Yeah.
and his girlfriend.
that's something like justice, his
Yeah.
girlfriend. But this donkey was known to kick because, of course, it was. So its hooves were chopped off before it was burned alive next to the rapist.
Oh, my God. What did they chop off of the rapists?
I don't know. It didn't say.
Well,
Yeah,
I
didn't
think
say.
we
I'll
all
go
know.
back and see in the microfiche and see if I can find it. And sadly, uncles, not all animals were necessarily afforded a trial for their sins. Sensitive listeners or cat lovers may want to mute for the next 90 seconds.
beware, Doug.
I am a cat lover.
And so's Uncle Mark. Cats in medieval Europe, a place where humans, remember, nearly went extinct because of vermin-borne diseases more than once,
Yeah.
were seen as evil and connected to witchcraft. Cat burning started as a way to deal with the terror of strange old women who kept them as pets,
But it continued as a way to light your home.
and it turned into huge public festivals where masses of cats would be burned alive over bonfires
Oh, my God.
in nets or wicker baskets, or beaten to death with sticks as a fun game for children. On festival nights in some towns, cats were doused with flammable liquids and chased through the streets as they burned alive in one last panic.
We're a good species, we humans.
And again, rat and mouse-borne disease nearly wiped out a continent, and our stupid forefathers decided to torture and burn alive the only possible remedy.
Their natural predator.
Yeah.
Christianity, the answer to all life's
Right.
problems.
Well, it's nothing if not divinely inspired.
Jesus. So there is a name for this behavior, and it's called zoosadism. And as our friend Thomas Aquinas correctly surmised from watching Mindhunter, if you like that sort of thing, you're a fucking defective monster who should never be in the company of decent people.
I think Aquinas was more of a Dexter guy, wasn't he?
Well, he had a lot of time to binge
Except
watch.
for season 7. I mean, come on.
Well, yeah.
So this is an audio format, so you can't see the picture of Don Jr. and the dumber one I'm holding up to the microphone with a picture of a jaguar in it. So let me end close to where we began, with a Charlie Kelly-style miracle of hilarity and super earnest human weirdness. In 1587, the vineyards of Julian, France, were beset by humble weevils. You know, insects, the thing the Bible says have 4 legs for all the science nerds out there.
Right.
An ecclesiastical court was convened, and it was determined that the weevils were indeed ruining the harvest. Their defense attorney argued that they were God's creation, and they were also entitled to sustenance. The prosecution agreed, but said man did have dominion over them. This was a huge quandary, so the townsfolk came up with a compromise. In exchange for the weevils leaving their vineyards, they would select a nice piece of land that could forever be the weevils' property to live on.
Weevilville?
Well,
Weevillville.
Mark, I'm sorry, but you always have to choose between the lesser of two weevils.
Wow. I'm canceling the show. That was the last one.
I thought we'd make it. I thought we'd make it to 50, but we didn't. So
How are you guys the punsters in this one? I'm like notoriously bad at I'm a punter, but
Yeah.
you guys are really
You're more the dad joke guy.
Yeah, I guess
I don't know
so.
what's going on today?
It's rough.
We flipped the script. So what's really crazy about all this is when you read these stories, you hear about these stories originally, you're just like religious people just lost their fucking minds like a witch trial and just set people on fire.
Sure.
But this was really an earnest attempt to negotiate with nature.
Right.
And just fairly.
Yeah,
chopping the hooves
look,
off and burning it, not so much.
I mean, it does reek a little bit of you don't want to put people on reservations. We've learned this now, but
yes, they had not learned it in 1587.
right. But
So-
weevils, surely they cooperated.
Well, it gets even better. So the defense attorney went and examined the plot of land that was set aside, and he reported back that it was sterile and unsuitable. The prosecution argued it was a lush paradise, thus fit for weevils. This went on and back and forth for 8 months.
Wow.
And sadly, we will never know what the final verdict was because, and again, this is true, the last page of the court proceeding was eaten by insects.
Oh, that's good.
So that's bird law, guys. That is the sad, weird, idiot tale of justice misapplied.
I mean, I think we need to fire this back up again. I feel like there are some animals out there that we need to be trying in a court of law rather than just it's madness. It's
like
Armageddon out there.
I would like the power to at least issue citations to my cats.
Right.
I don't want to go back to this craziness, but I honestly think a few tickets might help them shut the fuck up at 4:00 in the morning. So.
Yeah. And I might be less prone to killing spiders if I could just litigate them out of my house.
Just bury them in paperwork.
So another summons. He's got 8, one in each leg. Oh, yeah. All right, well, that's stupid. That's bird law. Let's move on.
Right, let's move on. Hey, Uncle Mark, you know how sometimes...
I object.
Well, overruled.
Oh, damn it.
You know how sometimes we talk about the law and
Yes.
how religion... theoretically, in these United States, there's this separation between church and I'm doing air quotes between church and state.
Lies.
Apparently,
Lies. These are damned lies. Yeah, it's a very law-oriented show today.
yeah. That's right. That's right.
And I think we're going to explore another total absurdity with the law today. And we're joined by Uncle Doug.
Hello.
Who is sitting in what would normally be the venerable P. Andrew Torres seat of law-splaining.
Right.
To,
Except that he won't take our calls anymore.
And he's qualified to talk about
Well,
such
because
things.
you only call him at 3:15 in the morning after like your 9th DUI. So
Well, that's when I have the problems.
that's when I need you, dummy.
I can't help that.
Pick up. So, Doug, you're going to talk about an exciting new landscape of American legal wonderfulness, I think.
Yes, and this is not a legal podcast, nor is it a current affairs podcast, nor is it a political podcast.
So we're going to talk about all those things.
We're going to talk about all those things because one particular little guy,
It's not those things.
Correct.
Yes.
But when those things veer into our lane,
Yes.
then we certainly talk about them. And for some reason, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III cannot help but veering into this lane.
Der Keebler for Führer.
He drives his little elfin tank all over the road.
So for a more in-depth look into Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, I would refer listeners back to episode 41, where we talked a lot about him and his history and where he comes from, and we don't need to review that ground right now.
We poked the tree that he lives in.
We did. We
You know where he comes from is that the lust for that beautiful gold ring drove him so insane that now he lives in a cave and eats. What does he do? He eats fish. That's who he is.
Would that it would make him invisible. Anyway, go on.
Well, so as most of you and our listeners are aware, on Monday, July 30th, 2018, the Attorney General of the United States announced the creation of a Religious Liberty Task Force.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, exactly.
Bird cops.
There's not a lot known about this task force or what it will be doing exactly, except that, as Jeff Sessions said, the purpose of this task force is in part to enforce a 2017 Department of Justice memo that ordered the federal agencies to take the broadest possible interpretation of religious liberty when enforcing the law.
Point of order. I think we do know what this task force
exactly.
is for. And B, interpreting the law, the broadest possible thing in interpreting it for Christians.
We will. Yeah, 100%.
It is to a group of stormtroopers to break down the door of somebody who was mean to a white Christian guy on Twitter. So I'm fucked.
all of our Sikh and Muslim listeners out there, this is not good news for you, I'm afraid. So in this 2017 memo that Jefferson Sessions wrote, it states, religious liberty is not merely a right to personal religious belief or even to worship in a sacred place.
Oh, good.
It also encompasses religious observance and practice. Except in the narrowest circumstances, no one should be forced to choose between living out his or her faith, and complying with the law. Therefore, to the greatest extent practicable and permitted by law, religious observance and practice should be reasonably accommodated in all government activity, including employment, contracting, and programming.
So long as it's Christian.
So the following 20 principles should guide administrative agencies and executive departments.
Oh my God, there's 20.
There's 20 principles. We will not read them all here, but
Thank God.
You can go find this memo online, and it's long and it's bureaucratic, which is obviously on purpose. But there are 20 principles that government agencies, most especially the DOJ, which is a big one,
Department of Justice for our foreign listeners.
right? Department of Justice need to factor into their decision-making processes. So number 3 on that list of 20 is the freedom of religion extends to persons and organizations.
Organizations.
Right.
Number 4 says Americans do not give up their freedom of religion by participating in the marketplace, partaking of the public square, or interacting with government.
And we don't have to bake cakes if we don't want to.
Right. The baking of cakes factors into a lot of modern jurisprudence.
That number right there,
Yeah.
one, that should guarantee me the right as a gay person to go be able to buy a cake. But that's not what it's for.
It's for the exact opposite.
Right.
And again, just a little background on this. The laws that came out of the civil rights movement basically said if you're participating in the public square, which means if you're using the public roads, you're paying in and receiving services from the government, you cannot discriminate against people for A, B, and C various reasons. And recently, in a lot of cases, sexual orientation has been added to that list.
right. If you hang out a shingle,
Yeah.
and you're a dentist,
Yes.
and you cannot then hang below that no Koreans.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. And that's what is missing from a lot of this. I think the Scathing Boys have the game Make It Black, which is like
Right.
Like if you're wondering if what you're doing is okay, switch it to black and see. Like if you're wondering if it's okay to discriminate in the way you're doing it, just try it with a black person. Just see if in your mind that's okay.
Yeah, just pull out gay, put black.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Or Jew.
I'm not going to make this wedding cake because I don't like the fact that you are black.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Well, who knows these days?
Well, these
Seems
days,
like
yeah.
it's,
I think Jeff Sessions will get us there.
Yeah,
I think.
we're-
I think if there's one hero that can champion that cause,
why can't they make their own cakes?
I don't even know if they like our white people cakes.
Number 9 on that list of 20 is government may not interfere with the autonomy of a religious organization. And I have to apologize.
Boy,
because,
that's a slippery fucking slope.
well, this is a rabbit hole full of rabbit holes.
Right.
Yeah, so bear with me. We'll bring it kind of all together at the end, but I think all of these points are necessary to the story.
Yeah.
Of the 20 principles laid out in this memo, whose implementation is the sole purpose of this religious task force, or not sole purpose, but main purpose. 6 of them are based on the 1993 Religious Freedom and Restoration Act, or RFRA.
Right.
yeah.
Number 12, for example, and we'll talk about RFRA here in just a second, but number 12 on that list says RFRA does not permit the federal government to second-guess the reasonableness of a religious belief. Number 15, RFRA applies even where a religious adherent seeks an exemption from a legal obligation requiring the adherent to confer benefits on third parties. There's your wedding cakes.
yeah.
Or that's also like to protect nuns from having to provide birth control to their employees.
Which they weren't being asked to do anyway.
Right. And
They're being asked to provide information on where that could be the policy.
They had to, or the oppression of having to sign that waiver that said we
right,
don't the way
right,
have to
right.
do this.
Fill out a form. It's the worst.
So RFRA was introduced in 1993 by Chuck Schumer in the House and Ted Kennedy in the Senate. And then passed nearly unanimously and then signed into law by Bill Clinton. So thank you, godless Democratic Party.
Yeah.
RFRA reinstated what is called the Sherbert test, which derives from a couple court cases. Again, we're going down a bunch of holes, but we'll get out. The only way out is through right now. Sherbert v. Werner in 1963 and Wisconsin v. Yoder in 1972. The Sherbert test mandates that strict scrutiny, quote unquote, be used when determining whether the free exercise clause of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution is in effect.
I didn't understand any of that, but I suddenly want sherbet.
So, basically, RFRA states that a religiously neutral law can burden a religion just as much as a law that was intended to burden that religion. Therefore, the Act states that the government shall not substantially burden a person's exercise of religion, even if the burden results from a rule of general applicability.
Wow.
Okay,
So in trying not to burden the religion, or any you may burden some religion by accident.
Right.
Therefore, we can't have laws.
Right.
basically,
Yeah, exactly.
So if my religion mandates that I can't drive 55,
Right.
and the speed limit is 55, even though the law is meant for everyone, it is particularly onerous to me based on my sincerely held, that's in quotes because that matters, religious belief, and therefore I am free to drive at any speed I want.
Which your religion is called semi-Hagerism.
Exactly.
Or if my religion says that I can't seek medical attention for my child, even though they would be healed and quickly taken care of, I can let my child die,
even though child abuse laws apply to everyone.
Right.
Your sincerely held religious belief means that you don't have to treat your child.
right? Which, by the way, that doesn't work. A lot of people have gone to jail for this.
But not all of
Less
them.
and less, exactly. Okay, so a lot of listeners will know this, but the motivation for RFRA was actually a response to 2 other court cases, Ling versus Northwest Indian Cemetery Protective Association in 1988,
That's a classic.
and Employment Division v. Smith in 1990, that dealt with the government building roads on sacred Native American lands and the allowance of peyote to be used in Native American religious rituals.
Right.
In both cases, the government ruled against the Native American tribes, said a peyote was a class 1 drug. And
Because if you're building roads on peyote, it's a fucking disaster. Been there.
And a couple religious tribes, nations, right, reservations, tried to prevent the government from building roads for logging and oil purposes. And the government said, well, it's an Indian treaty, see? And
So basically what they're saying is what we need to learn from all of this is, again, that these laws, that RFRA, that anything that's practiced in the name of religious freedom in this country, what it means is Christian freedom.
Yeah, well, so in 1993, the young Clinton administration tried to use this as a triangulation issue to take it away from Republicans as a campaign issue.
All right.
So they were saying, we'll pass this law that kind of helps Native American tribes. We'll look like we're protecting religion. But meanwhile, what they actually did was handed a baseball bat with nails in the top of it to the Christian right.
To Antonin Scalia.
Exactly. And the unintended consequences of this. You know, the RFRA has been used prominently in the Hobby Lobby case we were just talking about, about employer-provided contraception, the Masterpiece Cake Shop case in 2018. Bakers don't have to bake cakes for gay people,
which is not what that said. But I mean,
that's how it's been interpreted,
right? And it's emboldened a lot of bakers.
Exactly. And
what the fuck is wrong with bakers? Like,
I don't know.
What the fuck is the? Is it
Why are
something
so
with the
many
flour?
religious bigots baking cakes?
Do they have sugar lung and it drives them crazy? Like, we need some serious fucking autopsies to figure out what in the world drives florists and bakers to be so fucking homophobic.
I don't know.
Well, we all know that baking is just a function of religion. So
Yeah, I suppose it is.
Well, and baking does not come across as the most. I'm going to demonstrate my bigotry here. Manly. It seems more of kind of,
a lady thing.
It's not auto mechanic. It's not, fireman. It just seems more like, why are all these kind of crazy religious bigots doing this thing that most of them would probably make fun of? Right? I don't understand how they fell into this thing.
It's typically, it's typically not a lumberjack competition.
Right. Anyway.
What do I know?
Another 2000 law called the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, or RLUIPA, introduced by one Orrin Hatch, extends religious privileges to property and has become another baseball bat in the hands of the religious right, basically trying to erode the protections against religious encroachment into government. Both laws were also recently used as ammunition in the religious right's Trinity Lutheran v. Comer, which drove a knife into the heart of the prohibition against public funding going to religious institutions. After this case failed utterly in the lower courts, it was overturned, and this Trinity Lutheran got a favorable outcome from the Supreme Court, the tie being broken by the newly appointed Neil Gorsuch.
Yep.
So these two laws, RFRA and RLUIPA, were both mentioned by Jefferson Sessions in this memo and in the speech he gave introducing this Liberty Task Force. So these are bricks in an edifice that has been being built for 50 years.
Yeah.
Right? That's meant to tear down the civil rights movement, the New Deal, the Great Society.
Don't vote, because what does it fucking matter? Don't. Both sides are the same.
Exactly. Also, RFRA and RLUIPA are main components of this memo. This memo also it has a stated goal, which is to prohibit the IRS from threatening tax-exempt status for any religious organization that actively lobbied on behalf of a political candidate.
Which is against the law.
It is against the Johnson Amendment.
You're right.
Yes. Now,
so we have a law that says that they can't do it, and we have an
Attorney General.
We have a Department of Justice that will not be allowed to prosecute them.
So another rabbit hole. The Johnson Amendment, named after then Senator LBJ, is a provision of the U.S. tax code passed in 1954 that prohibits all 501c3 nonprofit organizations, such as religions, from endorsing political candidates. And
this it also binds, like, let's not forget that it also binds, like, a museum can't support a specific candidate and stuff. Yeah. The whole point is these are, when you're a 501c3, when you're a nonprofit organization, you're not paying taxes, and you're kind of owned by the people,
right?
And
everybody else is paying taxes, so they can share the common space and have a voice,
right?
Exactly. You're free from that, but in exchange, shut the fuck up.
You're not paying for the roads. You're not paying for the fire department.
Nope.
So therefore, you can't advocate for candidates. Also, another thing that this the repeal of, or the complete just negation of the Johnson Amendment would do is make political donations tax deductible. Because if you can launder your money through a church who is endorsing a candidate,
right,
you can deduct that.
Yeah,
which currently you can't do. So there's a lot here. So let's go back to the religious, what do they call it? The Religious Left TF, RLTF Task Force.
Yeah,
Religious Liberty Task Force. Sorry,
yeah,
I got a lot of words.
Which
here.
is a distinct entity from the Space Force, I believe, but maybe not.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
They're related.
Maybe not.
They'll share ships.
Yeah. If there's one thing we know, it's that astronauts have rights, and and religious rights are chief among them.
Actually, when you're weightless, you have no rights or lefts or ups and downs.
Oh my God!
Oh, this whole show is just gone completely sideways.
Okay. In his speech announcing the creation of the Religious Liberty Task Force, Jefferson Sessions said the following. I would do it in my best Boss Hogg impersonation, but I don't do a good one. So let us be frank. A dangerous movement, undetected by many, is now challenging and eroding our great tradition of religious freedom. There can be no doubt. This is no little matter. It must be confronted and defeated.
Yeah, it's you, you dickhead.
I think he's talking about us.
He's talking about that.
He's talking about us.
He's talking about us.
But like the thing that he's describing is his damn self.
Absolutely.
Yep.
This election, and much that has flowed from it, gives us a rare opportunity to arrest these trends. Such a reversal will not just be done with electoral victories, but by intellectual victories. I don't think
sure.
so.
Yeah,
I don't think
you're not.
Yeah, you guys got that one.
I think
gonna get any of
I
those.
think the word arrest does a lot of heavy lifting in that paragraph.
Yeah.
We have gotten to the point where 8 courts have held that morality cannot be a basis for law, where ministers are fearful to affirm, as they understand it, holy writ from the pulpit.
Fuck off.
Fuck you.
Fuck off.
And where one group can actively target religious groups by labeling them a hate group on the basis of their sincerely held religious beliefs.
No, hold on there. You can call anything you want a hate group.
Well,
He can't tell you can't do that.
right, exactly.
He's just trying to undercut the Southern Poverty Law Center.
That's exactly right.
And he's trying to he's trying to discredit them.
That's exactly right.
Because they're mean and they call the KKK a hate group. Even
Well,
though
they've not only listed the KKK a hate group, but the Christian Family Research Council, the American Family Association.
because the SPCL or Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, they're not into like hating on queers. They're just kind of not about that.
Right.
They're nice to the Jews and the blacks and the queers and the
Do you know who else they've listed as a hate group?
us.
The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Well, no shit.
Yeah, duh. I'm surprised they haven't gotten to the actual Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
One other thing that Jefferson Sessions said as he rolled up his comments was,
Yeehaw. Get him.
I am going to get those Duke boys if it's the last thing I do.
We're old.
The task force will help the department fully implement our religious liberty guidance by ensuring that all Justice Department components are upholding that guidance in the cases they bring and defend, the arguments they make in court, the policies and regulations they adopt, and how we conduct our operations. That includes making sure that our employees know their duties to accommodate people of faith.
Yeah. Again, though, when somebody says my faith is Jediism,
Absolutely.
or my faith is Satanism,
Or my faith is Mormonism.
or my
Right.
faith is Mormon, they are not talking about
this
that
is
person.
white evangelical Protestants.
Yep, that's exactly right. No one else.
This task
Not
force,
Catholics.
Nope.
This task force has 2 jobs: privileging Christianity,
Yes.
and paving the way for honest, good folk to target and to discriminate against gays and transsexuals and whatever they want at their leisure.
Yeah, this is the
completely agree.
make Leviticus great again act. It's completely insane, and this is why, like, stupid fucking Orrin Hatch and any of these people from religious minorities that are excited about opening this Pandora's box, they're fucked too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fucked too.
Because, in Clinton's case with RFRA, I think they were actually trying to help a religion that they thought was getting beat up a little bit.
Right.
I mean, the slippery slope is the problem, that it will end up in the hands of people who are religious bigots
if
and
there
only want
is
to help
ever
themselves.
a Lakota Sioux theocracy in this country, whatever.
We'll
But
sort
yes,
that out. We'll deal with that at that time.
I'm not super scared about it right now.
We'll cross that rope bridge when we have to.
Yeah,
It's so funny because what we have is a system where we've got 9 Supreme Court justices, all of whom are either Catholic or Jewish,
yes.
Yeah.
and
All of them are, yeah.
and then they're ruling on what the Satanists can and can't do. It's just a weird. This is a weird country, you guys.
It's a super weird country, and it is a weird time that I find I have very little frame of reference for on most days.
Yeah.
As everything like that, like what you're talking about, Doug, just gets eroded, and every norm is just destroyed. I don't know. It's I'm sorry to be such a bummer. This is legitimately scary. I mean, this is honestly
this is the culmination of decades and decades of court cases and funding and candidates and campaigns, and it's coming to fruition. They have. I'm sorry to be a bummer. They've never had more power than they have now.
Right.
And this is not a conspiracy. This is the stuff they say to cameras.
Yeah, this is Christian.
Well, no, it is a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy theory.
Right.
It is an open and very outspoken conspiracy.
Yep.
To eliminate the minority protections that have been so hard fought over time in this country
For both-
for people of color, for women, for LGBT people, for handicapped people,
Yeah.
For atheists,
for atheists,
for non-believers, for the religious minorities of this country.
Yeah. Because these things that people have fought and bled for and died for benefit us all.
Yeah.
And they are being torn down.
including these overprivileged white Protestant evangelicals.
They're just too myopic to see it.
They think that the three of us being able to sit in this room and have this conversation is oppressing them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's like they said, about white people complaining about black folks who are protesting, or straight people complaining about gay people who are protesting.
Pride parades, yeah.
The loss of privilege feels like oppression.
If you're an idiot.
If you're a dipshit, and especially if you're like one of those people who refuses to hear anybody else, you feel oppressed when, oh no, the 80%, the 75% of us who live in this country who are Christians, somebody's saying not nice things about us.
Right.
Oppression.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, it's not, to go back to the homophobic bakers, freedom is not a cake, right? When someone gets some, you don't get less.
Right.
There's enough.
There's enough for everybody.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. With rights, someone else having equal of it
It's not a zero-sum game.
It's not taking your cake.
doesn't take away your rights.
Well, and we're coming up on the most important midterm elections of our lives. This religious task force is in its infancy. They don't yet have uniforms
Their
and
rockets
badges.
are not yet perfected.
Right.
Yes.
They don't yet have uniforms and badges, but if we keep going in this direction, they fucking will. So fucking vote.
Yeah.
Sorry.
and unfortunately, we're not a political podcast. We're not. That's not
Yeah.
what we're about. But you have to vote against these Republicans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do. It's just
just
plain
have
and
to.
simple.
There's evil afoot in the land, and even if you hate the Democrats,
It's a binary
the
choice.
lesser of two evils is the lesser of two evils.
Right. Yeah.
And it's cold comfort that right now what is protecting us more than anything else is the grotesque incompetence of these evil people.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's not count on that for too much longer.
And
Amen.
if you have a competent Democrat to vote for, then all the better for you.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Indeed.
All right, guys. Well, that was super fun. Let's move on.
Sorry, everybody.
Let's move on. Well, Uncle Mark,
Present.
it is our favorite time of the show. It's
Yes.
the most wonderful time of the show.
It's where we pass the plate,
We
brothers
do.
and sisters. We ask you to keep this little church open.
I wish we could actually physically pass a plate. Do you know how guilty it feels to move a plate from one hand to the next and not put something in it?
I'm so shame-based, isn't
It's
it?
so good.
It's
but
poor shaming.
yeah, it is.
It's super poor shaming.
Yeah, so we can't do that, but
We can't shame you in person, so we must do it through your ear holes.
through your over the air. If you're one of the people out there who feels like you could be a good person, you can,
and you want to prove it.
and you want to prove, and you should prove it.
Yeah.
You can join up with the following good persons who are this week's best people. So thanks dearly to Elam, Sam, to Jake, and Uncle Mark. You get to give a saint to Wobbles.
2 wobbles?
Yeah, you need to improvise for.
I don't know that I can improve on that.
No, well, Wobbles is in need of a patron.
Of some intercession. So
Yeah.
I think that wobbles probably requires the protection of Saint Francesca of Gatlinburg,
Yeah.
who is the patron saint of men who secretly like to wear feminine intimates under their coveralls during their shifts at the plant,
Sure.
and of course all Kevin Bacon based mirth. So congratulations, Wobbles. I hope that treats the condition.
Is there Kevin Bacon based mirth?
Sure, it was all the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon and all this.
Sure.
There's a lot of fun.
Sure. I once had some Kevin Bacon based mirth in that I went to a screening of a Kevin Bacon show, a movie at Sundance. We have the Sundance Film Festival here in Utah, and I went and he got up and his lovely wife, what's her name?
I can't remember. I don't know. Pretty mirthy, though.
Yeah, he and his wife got up. She directed the film. He was in the film, and they were talking about the film. Kira Sedgwick, that's it.
Kira Sedgwick.
And they were talking about the film, and for a solid, I'm going to have to say, 3 to 5 minutes, he had his hand in his pant pocket and was mindlessly fiddling with his junk.
With his bacon.
With his bacon.
Well, that is mirth. That's fun.
It was mirthy.
Yeah, you got a little something. In the South, they call that a little lang yap. Little something extra.
Mirthy and girthy.
Mirthy and girthy. All right.
All right. Well, so thanks so much to all of you for your generous donations. If our plate passing has guilted you well enough into joining up, please go to howtoheretic.com and click on the Patreon link, and that will get you there, and you can join up.
And again, hit us up if you need to leave the plate empty. Hit us up on iTunes or wherever. Give us a 5-star review. Just takes a sec.
Yeah.
Show us a little love, and that means more people get to hear all of this critically important information.
It's so vital. Let's matter of fact, let's move on to some more vital stuff. Well, Uncle Mark, we got a treat ahead of us.
We do. We have a special guest today, and Uncle Dan, you and I come from one particular strand of the religious experience from which we escaped, and we easily speak to a certain group, even though we try to speak to a broader one. But it's important.
And by that, you're talking about East Side Salt Lake.
To East Side represent Salt Lake, so to say. And so it's always good to bring on different voices, people from a different experience. And today we have just such a guest. We have Mandisa Thomas, who is the president and founder of Black Nonbelievers, Inc. Mandisa, welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show.
It's very it's our pleasure to have you, and thanks so much for being with us. Now you've been in the non-belief movement for quite a while, haven't you?
Yes, I've been involved in the atheist and non-believer secular community now since 2011, so that makes 7 years that I've been active.
Nice. Well, that's a nice long run at it. I've been at it as an amateur most of my life, but I'm
Yeah, interestingly enough, there have been people who have done this longer, but it feels like I've done it. It feels like it's been longer than that, but yes, it's been a while. It's been enough to see some serious changes in the movement, and to see a lot of good things and not so good things happen. So yes, I guess I'm considered a vet right now.
What made you decide to jump into professional atheism? What was the kind of catalyzing moment?
Well, when I first got started in the movement, there weren't very many Black atheists that I could connect with offline, and so Black Nonbelievers was started simultaneously to me working my full-time job. I was the event services manager at the Centers for Disease Control, the main campus. And from there...
So you planned all the outbreaks, is that what you're saying?
Yes, don't tell anyone though.
Okay, this is just between us.
That's between us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in between that time and with being connected with other leaders and other people in the movement, the momentum and the visibility just grew. Because my background was in events, that was what I do. We were able to successfully put BN on the map, if you will, by putting on larger events that connected us with other Black atheists and also the broader secular community. And so it was very, very helpful in increasing our visibility as well as the type of work that we were able to do. And so as a result, the requests for appearances and for working on various projects increased over the years. And so in March of this year, I decided it was time to focus on activism full time. So I resigned from my job. And because BN is still growing, and as well as my presence in the community. And so I decided that it was time for me to take that leap because I had been putting it off actually for a couple of years, but it was time this year.
Nice, nice. And you know, you're in the Atlanta area. I'm a little familiar with Atlanta. I've probably spent about a year there. And I was watching one of your YouTube presentations. You had a really interesting story, and I think it was when you went to Morehouse to give a presentation.
Yes, I remember that. That was from.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So one of the local attendees of the meetups here, he's also a member of our Facebook group online. Actually, he's a white professor who teaches at Morehouse philosophy, and he asked me would I speak with one of his classes. And so on a day that I was off, this was November of 2012, he asked me to speak. He's a fellow atheist, non-believer. And he asked me to speak with his class about my atheism, the fact that I'm an atheist, as well as Black non-believers. And so, interestingly enough, the students didn't really know why I was there at first. And then when I told them I was an atheist, and I asked the class how many of them identified as religious, and there were some professors in there, almost the entire class's hand went up. If not almost
Right.
the entire class. And so in speaking about my experience, my upbringing and my reintroduction into the identification as an atheist, I talked about Black non-believers, and I talked some about, the highly religious climate in the Black community, which, just that cannot be denied. But there were some students there who had some really, really great questions for me. It was like they were awestruck. They were like, "Wow!" Like I found out from the professor later that many of them remarked that I was the first Black atheist they had ever seen. And
And that's a thing in the Black community, isn't it? That there's an issue with, even if you are a non-believer, as a Black person, there's a lot of pressure to keep your mouth shut.
There's a lot of pressure due to the very high religiosity in the community, as well as the traditional factor. The church has played a significant role in the community building, or the community representation, if you will. That's how I like to put it. And there's this sense of tradition that comes along with being a person of color and being Black, and what it means to be Black. And being an atheist, it's like you're rejecting your identity as being Black. Like there's no way that Black folks can be atheists, or if we are, then certainly we're keeping it to ourselves, or if those who may privately identify as atheists and who are open activists, they don't speak on their atheism much. And which for some valid reasons, we certainly understand why, because yes, there is pressure. There is that sense of tradition, and you have and again the influence of the church is still so very, very strong, particularly in the Black community, that it makes the conversation and it makes the identification that much more difficult.
Yeah, I think that there's a thing, because both Uncle Mark and I left Mormonism, and there was this, there can be this very strong sense of, you're abandoning your community, you're abandoning your religion, you're abandoning your family. But no one ever accuses us of abandoning our race if we leave our religion.
True.
Yep.
Yeah.
or turning our back on on that community,
Yes.
which is something that black atheists have to face, isn't it?
It is. It is very much so, and also it's also the idea that it isn't it isn't very well discussed in our communities, and so there is just a sense of ignorance. The fact that wow, I didn't realize that black folks could be atheists. And I mean, we can be anything. That's You have black
Right.
conservatives. I mean, you have we are, we are diverse very much across the board. But when it comes to religion, um, and 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 the letting go, not even letting go of belief, but also openly identifying with the atheist identity, it is just almost still unheard of to many of the black folks, as well as there is while our numbers are growing within the secular community, we still aren't very well represented. And so now we're dealing with multiple issues and multiple concerns when it comes to the representation and the identity. So that was the main premise of founding Black Nonbelievers, was to try to resolve two very specific issues, to increase the
Right.
visibility and presence within the Black community and the secular communities, as well as letting fellow Black atheists know that they aren't alone, that there are
Right.
communities out here, and that there is more representation than we realize. It's just a matter of us finding each other.
Right. And that's what I think was so fascinating about that story about Morehouse is, the presumption I always have is that, kids these days, younger people, college kids, are far, far, far less religious than, my generation, the generation before me. So the fact that you startled them as college kids, as being one of the first atheists they'd ever met, I found that story super fascinating. And I wonder, Mandisa, if you could speak for a second about why the church is so ingrained traditionally in the Black community in America. Why is it something that is so deeply embedded in the culture that it makes coming out as an atheist, or just as someone who wants to leave the church for whatever reason, difficult?
Mhm. So yes, there are a number of reasons for that, and we must look at there's a traditional, historical and societal reasons for that. During slavery, um, it was against the law for blacks to read and write. The only book that was allowed to be interpreted was the Bible, and so many Christians had to accept, many slaves or the enslaved had to accept Christianity or they died.
Right.
And so the church became a part of, and the religion became a part of, many slaves, daily lives. It didn't stop many slaves from rebelling,
Mm-hmm.
but yes, it was the conditioning of the religion that that perpetuated slavery in this country. But also, once slavery ended, and also when the Reconstruction period ended, that was a time of Black progress.
Right.
There were Black congressmen, a lot of Black businesses that came about, but that also brought about the Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
And the enactment of segregation laws, and there was a lot of violence committed against Black folks, and so the church became the institution that supported the community for the most part. There are a lot of historically Black colleges and universities that were started in churches, and also the church became that support system when the legal system was the basically the United States effectively disfranchised blacks.
Right.
Legally, there are issues and there were, people had land taken away from them. They had, I mean, really just looking at the history of, segregation and Jim Crow and violence against Black folks. The church was that institution that many people held on to.
Sure.
as their only as their refuge. Their belief in God got them through. So there is this, and also it was one of the only institutions where blacks could rise to prominence at that time.
Right,
The
right, right.
pastor was very highly revered. Church was the place that people could, dress in their best. It was, definitely a community, the community there, and that's where people felt safe.
Right.
So we have to take those factors into consideration as to why the church plays such a huge role in the black community.
Yeah, and for those reasons, it makes a lot of sense. But also for, with the civil rights movement and different black identity movements, it's always been peculiar to me that more black people didn't reject that coercive history of the church, and that we don't see now a much bigger black atheist community.
That is correct. Yes, that the religion and the church is still so very much ingrained in the black community for those very reasons. Now, there is a history of free thought in the black community, humanism, atheism. The founder of Black History Month, or the foundation for Black History Month, was started by a freethinker, Dr. Carter G. Woodson.
Yeah.
And many people don't know that, and which is very, very alarming, because Black history in this country really is so vast, and it doesn't always include it isn't only made up of the civil rights movement, of the pastors and the preachers who have risen to prominence. And so, yes, there is there is this misidentity, if you will. There's a misrepresentation of the black community, that there aren't any.
Right.
There were never any atheists. There were never any freethinkers. There were never any humanists. And so that is also part of our mission, is to re-educate and inform those who weren't aware, which sadly includes many of the black folks.
So let's talk about that just for a moment. You have this great organization with that's geared toward people who are testing the waters, maybe of free thought and atheism or humanism. Our show has a very large listenership of people who may or may not be ready to who may have not quite let go of their Christian or their religious roots yet. Talk to us about what message you'd like to give to especially black folks who are maybe thinking about coming out as non-believers, or who are thinking about dipping their toes into the waters of non-belief.
Or they're in the closet, or
they've been a non-believer for a while and they just are too afraid to come out to anybody. Tell us about what your message is to them.
4 simple words that we have said over and over again, and you are not alone.
Damn right.
Understand that whatever doubts you've had, whatever you thought if you thought you were the only one who has ever experienced this, please know that you are not alone. And that doesn't just include other black atheists. I've always intended for black non-believers to be a starting point for those who are questioning religion and in favor of leaving, and also to get a sense of that, to have that safe space where they didn't have to deal with certain questions or certain things from other folks who didn't understand, whether it is other white atheists, because that can be an issue. But overall, the community is very welcoming and accepting and understanding. It's just that you have some folks who have their blind spots. But understanding that you are not alone. Many of us have been where you've been. We've had these questions. Many of us, I know growing up, even though I wasn't raised religious, I learned early about the imposition of Christianity in particular on slaves, on the slaves, on my ancestors.
Right.
And I also wondered why so many are still Christian. But when you understand the history of it, when you learn about it, you can understand it, but it's still pretty sad. So
Yeah.
what those questions that you've had, we've been there. We totally understand it. There is a huge community of people who get it.
Yeah.
And it just takes, just know that we are here for you. And I think that is part of, that has been a very, very important part of the community building that, the atheist movement has sought to improve upon. Because yes, you can come to, your conclusions, uh, doing your, either through observation, research, or both. But if you don't have anyone else to connect with, then it makes it that much more difficult.
It's so
And
lonesome. Yeah,
so,
it's such a lonesome journey if you're behind the wall of religion or something. And that's kind of what we aim to do too, is bounce a message over the transom, and you are not alone, you know.
yes, that has been the primary, slogan or statement that we that we impart, or that we let people know. You are not alone.
And we're gonna.
Please know that.
I think we're gonna try and put a link to your organization on our website.
Oh, for sure we will.
In our little, we have a little sort of resources page, and we'll put that on there. But if they don't go through us, how can people reach you?
You can find us at our website, blacknonbelievers.org. It does revert to blacknonbelievers.wordpress.com, but it's blacknonbelievers.org. If you type that in, our website will come up. We are also on Twitter at B Nonbelievers. The B and the N are capitalized. You can contact us the same way you guys did, through our website, via email. We respond very
Yep.
quickly. You can,
you did indeed.
yes. And you can also find us as a resource on many other secular organizations pages, because we are very much, we advocate, we promote collaboration and coalition building. You can also find us on Meetup. All of our affiliate groups have Meetup pages where we post our events and our activities. And pretty much,
And that's important. You guys have but you have affiliates all over the country, right?
that is correct. Our most recent affiliate was established in the St. Louis area, St. Louis, Missouri. And so, yes, we do have, as a matter of fact, I was just in my hometown of New York, and I attended a meetup with the New York City chapter there, as well as one of the other secular groups there. We did a joint meetup, and which turned out very, very well. It was an amazing time. Folks just got together. They shared their stories. There were there were a lot of first timers there, who just shared their experiences, and we're just very, very glad to be in the presence of individuals that they could connect with, and hopefully build more on that community part.
That's great. And as soon as Salt Lake City develops a black community beyond the Utah Jazz, I'm sure that we'll have a segment here.
Well, who knows?
Chapter.
There might be a couple secret non-believers there, man.
Yes.
They need our love too. So.
But the one thing I always encourage people to join or participate with secular groups, no matter who they are. It may be a case of trial and error. The one thing I've found is that, I offer advice to groups who have people of color in them, maybe not to be too imposing, but, just to kind of gauge where the people are, so that they may know whether they're comfortable or not. But I encourage our members and other people of color to start with an atheist group, a secular group,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah, start with what's close at hand and see if it works. And
Yes.
For the most part, I would say, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, I would say it's a pretty welcoming group of people, the atheist community. Would you say that that's true?
Yes, I agree. Yes, for the most part, especially offline. And that's also another area that yes, because the online community can be very brutal and vicious, and I encourage people to look beyond the online spaces, because that's where you get a really good sense of how people are when you connect with them in person.
I totally agree. I think we have a lot of work to do as a community, a lot of work, and we're better at doing the work when we see each other face to face, rather than Twitter.
Yes.
Well, Mandisa Thomas, thank you so much for coming onto the show. We really appreciate your willingness and your time, and we'll hope to talk to you again in the future.
Absolutely, and thank you both very much for having me once again on the show. It has been a pleasure and an honor, so I really do appreciate it very much.
Now, don't get crazy with the honor thing. That's come on now. No, it's been awesome. Thanks, Mandisa. Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you all. Send us an email if you want to, howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you are in the need of the services of a good bird or rat lawyer, you can leave us a voicemail about it at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986.
Yeah, and also follow us on the tweeters and go to the Facebook page. We're at howtoheretic. And thanks so much to everyone who's a patron.
And thanks to Cody Layton for editing the show.
And thank all of you, dear friends, for listening. Bye-bye.